When Yves Montand was 67 years old, he found out that his first child was going to be born. His first reaction was, "What will people say? It's impossible. I'm a grandfather." In his only marriage to Simone Signore, who died in 1985, there were no children together. Montand adopted her daughter Catherine and raised her from the age of 5. When Catherine had a son, Montand considered the boy his grandson. The first weeks after the news that his girlfriend Carole Amiel was pregnant were filled with doubts. He didn't know whether to be happy or sad. Although in 1987, shortly before Carole's 27th birthday, he made an official statement to the press. Yes, he has a girlfriend, because life goes on. He said it didn't erase anything or erase his past. Everyone already knew that after the death of Simone Signore, Montand was living with a young friend, his former secretary. In France at that time, there was a program, Street Microphone. Journalists walked the streets and interviewed random passers-by and once chose the unexpected fatherhood of Montana as their topic. To Karol's delight, most of the respondents said, "He had everything in his life except a child. This is the happiness he suffered." When it was time to give birth, Amiel went alone to the maternity hospital in Nice, so as not to disturb Montana. In between contractions, she tried to say in a calm voice that everything was fine, it was just a scheduled visit to the doctor. But the alarmed Montand had already flown to Nice. The birth was successful. The baby was born big and healthy. Montand carefully picked up Sleep in his arms, peering into his face, and said, "Wonderful baby." Days and months passed. The newly made father became sad, realizing that happiness is short-lived and perhaps he will not see how his son will grow up. However, the appearance of the baby gave him so much energy that he was ready to work around the clock. He devoted all his free time to the child, carried him in his arms, kissed him, played with him, fed him. At home, Valentine was called our curly-haired angel. All the phones in the world could ring in vain. All urgent matters were forgotten when Yves was next to Valentine. When the kid grew up, Montand began to show him cartoons and read books. He learned songs from children's films by heart and sang to Valentine. Unfortunately, the father's happiness was measured only 3 years. Yves Montand and Carole Amiel met in 1974. He was 53 years old at the time, and she was 14 years old. Carole's parents bought a house in the south of France, in the popular resort town of Saint-Paul-de-Vence, where celebrities like to relax. Every morning, Carole got on her bike and went to school. One day, returning from lessons, she saw an elegant tall man walking a dog. His face seemed familiar, and Carole guessed that it was Yves Montand. Although she was obsessed with the Rolling Stones, the girl knew about the existence of the chansonnier and actor Yves Montand. When she caught up with Montand, she saw his radiant smile and greeted him. He replied affably, "Hello, mademoiselle." The girl blushed, was terribly embarrassed, and quickly rode away on her bike. Karol arrived home wondering, why did she say hello to Montand? In the provincial town of Champagne, where she grew up, it was not customary to greet strangers, and her mother always forbade her to talk to strangers on the street. In between filming, Yves often came to Saint-Paul-de-Vence, and they accidentally bumped into Karol, either in the parks, where he visited with friends, or on the streets. She even made a special trip to the local library to learn more about Montana. Her mother once took her to the cinema to see the film The Red Circle, where Montand played. One day, Montand asked where she lived. She showed me her house. "Monsieur, I live here with my parents." He bombarded her with questions. How are things at school? Has she seen this play? Has she read this book? Karol tried to be on the level of this important special acquaintance, so she read voraciously Prévert, Aragon, Éluard, Apollinaire, poets whose songs were sung by Montand. He could ask what she was reading now, and Karol would answer, Prévert. He looked at her with rapt attention. Then she found out that Yves, deep down, considered himself flawed. He hardly went to school and missed out on a lot in his education. Sometimes he talked about his work, meetings, trips, and friends. With the occasional chance meetings and conversations in the neighborhood, years passed, the girl grew up. After graduating from high school, Karol went to university and started translating. She helped her father, who had a business in Italy. Over time, Montand came to St. Paul de Vence less and less. He mostly lived and worked in Paris. After a 13-year break, he began triumphant concerts at the Olympia. Paris was plastered with his posters, a dancing silhouette in black, a top hat in his outstretched hand. After his last concert at the Olympia, he began to prepare for a 3-month tour. It turned out that Karol was looking for a job at that time. She was tired of being under her father's wing and wanted freedom. When Montand asked her to work with him, she gladly agreed. He said, "I'm going abroad, and you know the languages. Why would I look for someone? Come with me." It was 1982. Karol turned 22 years old. Her duties included helping to compose the concert program, protecting Montana from journalists, evaluating the sound quality in the hall during the first 2 songs and reporting on it, and many other matters of the personal secretary, although taken on a probation period. During this time, they traveled to France, Belgium, and Switzerland. Karol realized during the tour that she was in love with him. But bad luck, because he was still married to Simone Signore. Simone lived permanently at their country estate, but whenever her husband came, she tried to dress up, did light makeup. The girl was afraid of the overwhelming feeling, but she understood that she could not resist his charm. I've told myself many times, you can't do that. Leave, stop, hide, disappear. She was drawn to him with an irresistible force. The situation was complicated by the fact that he, too, succumbed to the confusion of feelings. And the moment came when they could no longer restrain themselves. Simone Signore underwent her first surgery for a pancreatic tumor during this period. Before, when Montand traveled the world, she was always by his side. He definitely needed someone to protect him and create conditions for work, but Simone's strength was fading day by day. She looked exhausted and felt unwell. She could no longer serve him. Although it didn't matter at all, he loved her all his life, until the end of his days. The tour is over, and so is Karol's work. She returned to Paris and took up other business, but their meetings did not stop. Karol was ready for anything for him. She was satisfied with the role of the woman in the shadow. Simone died in 1985. The news caught Montana on the set. He finished playing a comedy scene in the movie Jean de Florette and went to say goodbye to his wife. Karol told him that she would wait as long as his decision was needed. 6 months passed, and they moved in together. Yves often told Karol about Simone and sometimes accidentally called her by her name. She wasn't offended because she and Simone had lived together for 35 years, or she pretended not to be offended. Montand talked a lot about Simon. She wasn't jealous of Simone. She just loved him completely with his whole past life. Due to the age difference, almost 40 years, Karol wasn't worried. Montand remained young in spirit, funny, cocky, easygoing, impetuous, and active. At 25, she could barely keep up with him. She asked him to slow down, to stop. He almost never had a proper vacation. Montand just couldn't rest. Karol almost forced him to go to Morris Island for 3 weeks. He didn't understand what people usually do on vacation, and she began to fill his days with important things, playing golf before lunch, then swimming in the pool, then going to the beach, then dinner, and a leisurely walk. And then came Karol's pregnancy and the birth of her long-awaited son. Montand immediately bought an apartment for her and the child in Paris on Saint-Germain-des-Prés. At the same time, a wild scandal broke out. A certain lady declared Montana the father of her daughter, Aurora Drossard. She said that she and Montand had an affair on set in 1974. Montand was indignant. "I did not sleep with this woman. It can't be. I always remember all the women I've slept with, but I don't remember her." It all started 6 months after Valentine was born and ended only 10 years later. This lady turned out to be a certain Anne Gilbert Drossard, a failed actress who starred in films under the pseudonym Anna Florange. An enterprising woman decided to earn money, and it became the meaning of her life. She began to claim the legal part of the Montana inheritance. An endless nightmare began, which crippled the health of an elderly man. Yves Montand worked on the set until the very last day of his life. The day before, he entered the icy water several times to reliably film the episode. As a result, the actor developed pneumonia and was taken to a clinic. The next day, Montand was gone. Against the background of inflammation, he had a heart attack. Yves died on November 9, 1991, without finishing the last film of his life. He was 70 years old. He was buried at the Père Lachaise cemetery next to Simone. The legal proceedings initiated by Anne Drossard continued after his death. Growing up, Valentin had to donate blood for forensic examination. It was taken from the remaining direct relatives. The examination showed that Aurora Drossard has 1 chance in 1,000 to identify herself as a relative of Montana. Anne Drossard seized on that paltry maybe. Soon even her personal lawyer resigned. But Annie persisted and decided to go all the way. Over the years, it has become a part of Anne's life, her earnings under the motto inheritance at any cost. In this obviously losing case, she found the best role of a failed actress. In 1997, Karol was summoned to court and informed that there would be an exhumation. Karol said that at that moment she had a feeling that the ground was slipping away from under her feet. Despite numerous protests from the friends of the deceased and the intervention of the Minister of Health, a decision was made in favor of Anne Drossard, based on Aurora's resemblance to Montand and the testimony of witnesses. 4 of the best experts in France carried out independent research and came to an undeniable conclusion. The daughter of this woman has nothing to do with Monsieur Montand. The case, which had a great resonance, was closed. What Aurora Drossard looks like can be seen in the picture below. Aurora's father turned out to be an alpine skiing instructor, married, and already had a daughter. Karol has been alone for a long time, devoting herself to raising her son, but then a man appeared next to her who became her life partner. Valentin did not inherit his father's talents. Due to the subsequent court proceedings and the increased attention from the newspapers, the boy had to leave school and study at home. Valentin graduated from the Faculty of Computer Engineering and Graphics. He describes himself as humble, awkward, and shy. He is 33 years old, single, busy with work, and does not enjoy the fame of a famous father. Karol wrote the book Letters to Montanus, which became a bestseller in France. She has never been officially married. Karol said in an interview that Montand once mentioned, "The people we loved do not die, but turn into invisibles."